we're going to be talking about reimagining the work experience and how to make the shift from employer choice to employee choice. I'm joined by our good friend, Laurie Winkler, Senior Vice President and Chief HR Officer at Zimmer Biomet, Joe Sangregorio, Chief HR Officer at Curia, Richard Taylor, Senior Vice President of People Experience and Diversity at NASDAQ, and last but not least, Brian Dames, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at Safeguard Global. Welcome, everyone. How are you all?
Doing great.
It's nice to see you again.
Wonderful.
Nice to see you all again.
Great to be here.
And I'm surprised you came back, Laurie, after last time.
Me too.
I know. Should we tell everyone what happened after last time?
No, I don't think that's necessary. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's
good
a
to
good
see
thing.
you have your sense of humor with you today.
Yeah. Basically, everyone, Laurie did such a great job last time that her LinkedIn got taken over for a few weeks because it was such great advice and guidance. So I think it's a good thing, Laurie. I know but there is a warning to the other panelists that, you know, if you share too much good advice, you get loads of friend requests on there. But Brian, let's jump straight in. When we think about the future of work, it has a whole new meaning. I think it's changed significantly over the last 2 years. How has it changed from your perspective, and how we define the word future of work now, or the words future of work?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept and one that we've thought about and researched. Because when we look at how the media defines future of work, influencers, most of the chatter in our industry equates future of work with the concept of work anywhere, and that's been accelerated by COVID. And we all have had to react as employers and trying to keep our business running in a very, very trying and unpredictable time. And then also, still maintain and deliver a great experience for our teams. And, as we think about the concept of future of work, really, we think about it in a couple of different ways, because the pre-existing definition of future of work being work anywhere really exists. That's not future, that's present. So what does that mean for the new definition of future of work? And it's our belief that COVID caused sort of a shift in the marketplace where talent around the world has sort of had an awakening, where they realize their value, they realize the value they delivered for their employers through a very trying time. And it's our belief that the required experience to make that talent happy, and the flexibility in the experience that we all are going to have to deliver for talent in the future is really going to extend way beyond location. It could be many other attributes that talent is interested in, very custom depending on the generation you're dealing with, or even the individual. So we really think of future of work as not work anywhere, but really work in any way. And the other thing we think about too is, when we think about future, what time horizon are we talking about now? The velocity of future, how fast is it going to come at us, and how reactive and flexible do we need to be? And it feels like it's at a velocity and pace that we have not seen before. And that the requirements and the needs and the demands of that talent is ever growing, and we have to figure out exactly what it is, depending on who we're talking to, the attributes of their work experience that are important to them, and be able to flexibly sort of deliver that to them. So very interested to hear what the panel thinks about that, and what exactly that new work experience is going to have to look like, and how we're going to have to respond to it.
I'd like to chime in there, Brian, and just add to that. It's absolutely true, but it's also not just the where you work, but it's the how you work. It's the why you work at this point. That's the future. We've seen, obviously, with the Great Resignation and COVID, a lot of changes and shifts. And interestingly enough, from our perspective, we've heard a lot about the why. Exit interviews telling us that people are leaving for no reason at all. So that's creating a new concept of work. And from my standpoint, I've gotten tired of hearing about the new normal. I've dubbed it the now normal, because it's now. It's not a matter of what's going to happen or what did happen, but what's happening today, as you said. So it's a combination of where, why, how they work, and how they learn and how they interact. that's really driving the future of work from my perspective.
Yeah, I would just add that I think the future of work is here. I don't even know, excuse me, that there's, I mean, certainly we're going to see it's fluid, and we're going to see this constant pace of change at a very accelerated pace. But I think we're in the future of work right now. And we just need to kind of work through some of those logistics and really understand what the employee value proposition is now, because it has changed so dramatically. And I think once we get a good sense of what that is, certainly within, at least in our respective organizations, then we can really accommodate what the work is going to look like going forward, the content of the work, how it gets done, where it gets done, all of it. But I don't think any of us have ever quite experienced anything like this. Certainly I haven't in my career, but I think we're in the future right now.
I would just piggyback on what my colleagues have said here too. I think it's a scary time for employers. So like what Laura just mentioned, if you haven't lived through this before, there's not a playbook and you turn it open, oh, page 17 says what to do, right? I think we've all heard this acronym VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I would add another one, which is relevant to me. It's DAD. It's diverse, way more diverse than our historical precedent have shown, agile, and distributed. So employers really have to wrap their heads around the diversity challenges and to really focus on that, to respond, as people have said, in a very volatile and much more agile fashion. How do we just quickly move forward? And to be really thinking about distributed technology, which we'll talk about in a moment, has really allowed us to be distributed. And because employees know they can work that way, and we've had record profits from many industries in the last 2 years, it's really hard for leaders to say, no, you have to be in the office 5 days a week. Employees are saying, why? We have record profits. Why are you forcing me at my desk?
Yeah, and love that new acronym.
Rich, Joe, and Lori, I'm interested to hear your perspective. When we say, when we talk to our clients that the work experience is really extending beyond location, Rich, like the point you just made, the other ways that we see it manifesting right now, to Lori's point, the future is here, is now it's not just about location. It's I want to define my work experience in the hours that I work. I may want to define my work experience in how I'm classified as an employee. Maybe I don't want to be a direct employee. Maybe I just want to work on a project basis. Maybe I want to work for multiple companies. And then you layer on these new expectations with the diversity by generation. We're for the first time ever, we're dealing with 5 different generations that are employable in the global workforce. So I wonder if you're starting to experience that the expectations are raising beyond location, because we're there, that expectation is very real, and we're all having to deal with that. I wonder if it's extending into these other attributes for you as well.
Yeah, I can briefly jump on that. Oh, go ahead, Lori. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think, first of all, we too are there now in terms of location, and frankly, we've had a flexible work culture for the last, as most people have, I'm sure, most organizations have had for the last 2 years, and we want to continue that because I think that's a differentiator for us as an organization in the industry and in which we play. Or which we serve, I should say. When I start thinking about employees defining their work experience, I think a good starting point in my world is really about the flexibility and the hours that they work and where they work. When we had a discussion last week about some of these more, I would say, advanced stages of the employee experience, like choosing to work for multiple companies and just some other, I think, experiences that I never actually thought I would face into. I start thinking, wow, I don't know that we're there yet. I think just getting to a place where folks are feeling like they have the flexibility and the balance that they need because of the burnout that we're seeing across industries, right? And the fatigue that folks are having, not just from COVID, but from the WebExes, the Zooms, the lack of differentiation between work and rest of life. I think for me, just just getting that the timing and the scheduling and how folks are going to work is really most critical. When I start thinking about some of the things, Brian, that you had raised last week, I think, wow, there's a lot coming at us, a tsunami really of significant change.
I agree with all of that, Lori, and I would say I think the pandemic has thrown this into bold relief. But I work at a global company. NASDAQ is operating in 30 countries, and we've always had a round planet, despite a few naysayers. And it's really always been very hard to work across time zones. We have an office in Sydney, we have an office in Manila, in Bangalore, in Stockholm, in London, in New York, in San Francisco. And what we've realized most pressingly recently is we don't need to be on the call together. I'll give you a quick example. We're a public company. We do an annual proxy statement for our shareholders. There's probably 50 different people working on our proxy. We're working simultaneously on a shared document, and we're working asynchronously. So I can put in my comments to my little section of the proxy, which is a couple pages, and then somebody in legal can have a question at Rich Taylor, and I see that later that day or the next day, and I respond. We don't need to be on a call across 20 time zones together. So it really is shifting the way we think about our work. And again, I know this can be scary for employers, but my point is there really are great solutions today that we just have to put some effort into thinking through what does this need to be? What's the minimum viable environment that gives employees the chance to choose how and when they work? Maybe you take a couple hours off to give your kids a bath and a bedtime story and put them to bed, and you hop back on later. But that's not what somebody else is doing. We can work asynchronously as well as remote, and it really can work very well. This isn't a problem as much as it is an opportunity to rethink and actually offer an even improved employee value proposition.
In fact, I have two examples that came out of the pandemic that hit my organization. So 50%, 60% of our employees have to go into a building every day. They work in a lab, they work on a manufacturing floor. But we also had the limitations of social distancing. We also had a lot of other limitations. So one of these scenarios is we actually asked the employees, how do you want to work? Where do you want to work? And when do you want to work? They knew they had to come into labs. And interestingly enough, they were part of the solution. Perfect example is one of our labs. We did not have the space to social distance. They were basically working one shift during the course of the day. They amongst themselves volunteered because, as Rich said, some would rather work during the day and be home at night with the family. In other cases, they said, I'd rather be home with the kids because I have no choice during the day, or my partners, or whatever the case may be. So I'll take that night shift because that works best for me. And we were able to accomplish two things: give the employees what they want, but still have the service that we needed to our customers. Huge scenario there that helped us. On the second example was, again, what everyone was talking about is the diversity of the worker coming to join us. We were limited, as most companies were, and we're a global company too. But if you had a building in Milan, you needed to get somebody who can get to Milan. Or if you had a building in Albuquerque, you needed to get somebody who could go work in Albuquerque. We just broke those barriers down. We said, we don't care where you're from. You can do the work, you could do. So it added to the diversity of the opportunity of the people around the globe to join us. So these are two things that came out of it, as it is now. It's not something that's going to happen and will continue. We hired quite a number of employees that in the past, before the pandemic, we would never consider, and they would never apply.
That answer your question there, Brian?
Yeah, we definitely can keep going. You know, it's really interesting because I think it speaks to this idea of velocity, and meaning, you know, when we historically would talk about this idea of future of work, it seemed to be exactly that. You know, this really futuristic time horizon. Lori and I were talking on the prep last week, and I distinctly remember it was right before the pandemic hit. We have the benefit of working with a lot of different companies, like you know, some on the panel today, and we were evaluating the idea of being able to pay in cryptocurrency, and looking for a partner to be able to do that. And as we had the conversation pre-pandemic, I remembered us distinctly saying, well, how much of a demand is this really? Like, how many of our clients are asking for this on behalf of their workers? And you know, we weren't sure that we were seeing a lot of it. And it feels to me like there's more empowerment now, where, you know, talent and the worker are asking for more things like that are important, and that it doesn't seem so futuristic to us anymore. We hear it a lot more than we did pre-pandemic, and that's that idea of this velocity, that there seems to be this talent empowerment as they've awakened out of this the whole scenario that we were thrown into.
Mm-hmm. Richard, I want to jump back into the technology piece for a second. It's interesting you mentioned your example, because I was chatting with the team over at Airbus a few weeks ago, and they mentioned that their engineers are now building planes in the cloud together, right? And it just blew my mind that they're logging in from different parts all over the world and building planes in the cloud. And in many cases, they're actually coming in VR and seeing this virtual model and kind of building it. It kind of blew my mind, to be honest. But they have people all over the world, different time zones, adding to it in the way you described. What are some of the other ways that employees and employers are using technology to shift that balance from employer choice to employee choice?
Yeah, so many. And I think we've all become experts. So I'm not going to reveal anything we don't all know. But I do want to start out with a caveat. I want to be aware, and I remind myself, not everyone in every role lends itself to remote work and all these kind of cool new things. There are people who work in retail, or delivery drivers, or pharmacists, or nurses who need to be there, right? You're a cashier at the register. You need to ring up the sale. So it is a privileged situation to be able to work remotely and asynchronously through tech. I can say for my company, NASDAQ, which is a tech company in the capital markets, as people probably know, we are using a ton of technology that's really helped us. And in some ways, we're still learning how to get the most value. We recently implemented Microsoft Teams. I think many people have this, but also Slack and other platforms, where if you are clever, team by team, and also as a company, you can set up team hubs and say, listen, here's our calendar for the next month. Here's our top 5 priorities. Here's the documents that relate to that. And Lori, here's your work stream. Rich, here's your work stream. Joe, here's your work stream. Brian, here's your work stream. Let's check in once a week. So the technology is allowing us to really organize way better than even in the office. Wasn't even in Office 1.0. There wasn't always a central place to look on the wall and see all your projects and all your calendars and all your due dates. So in a way, being remote and even asynchronous has allowed us to get better organized. But my proposal is you have to be intentional about this. It won't magically happen. I think what magically happens if you don't pay attention is things fall apart. People get confused. No one knows who's doing what. And then, this remote thing isn't working. I'm like, well, have you really put effort into making it work? It's a different way of working. Just like, the Industrial Revolution was a different way of working. Are we really putting thought into what's the right tech for the right team at the right time without overdoing it? Sometimes a text is way better than getting everybody all around the world on a call. Just quick text update. We're having an org change. Want to let you know. We'll check in tomorrow morning, right? So I'm finding that between Teams and Slack and Zoom and SharePoint collaboration documents, you can get a lot done remotely. And then there's some things you do need to talk live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think we were all nodding when you mentioned the example of having to jump on a whole Zoom call, just have a quick call. I even said to my team, you can call me. I do have a phone that if you need me quickly or if you want to drop me a message, we don't always have to jump on a Zoom call. And vice versa, the team came to me and said, do we really need to be doing these multiple Zoom calls every week? I was like, not really. Let's just cut those down. Or I'm sure we've all experienced this. You end up getting hit with messages from 7 or 8 different platforms. I've got an email, I've got a Slack message, I've got a Teams message, I've got a phone call, and you're just all over the place. And my team's like, Chris, you didn't see that message? I'm like, where? Oh, a message on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, another place to get a message as well. So you're right. We have to be very careful and intentional about the technology we put in place as well. What are you experiencing, Lori? Are you experiencing something similar?
Well, listen, we are both a global manufacturing company and we're in medical devices. So to the earlier points that were made, we have folks that had to be in a manufacturing facility throughout COVID, right? And there's support functions as well that had to be there. I will answer your question, but I do want to make a comment. I think that because when COVID first hit and we were all scrambling to figure out what does this mean and how are we going to manage through it? and we're not going to be together in an office, and we didn't realize how long that was going to be. I think the Zoom, the WebExes, the whatever platforms are out there to connect this way became sort of like the life raft, right? To ensure that there was connection beyond just a phone call. And what's happening now, I think, is that it was almost like an overcompensation to do that. And now I think we're fatigued from it, right? So we're saying, right, just pick up the phone and call me. That's a lot more efficient sometimes than jumping on a Zoom or a WebEx. What I will say is that we have leveraged some programs, some communication programs that have been really effective. So we brought Yammer into the organization, and we're really encouraging our team members to leverage that, to really engage online and in that regard, versus constantly pushing out emails and other forms of more traditional communications. And we also implemented a global social recognition program, which has been really effective, which allows recognition to take place instantaneously. And because it's a social recognition program, folks can go on, make comments, and also provide, additional recognition to the folks that have received the reward. So we're leveraging those kinds of technologies, but it has become sort of an overflow of communications because there's such a desire to stay connected. And I think it can be overwhelming, and we're very thoughtful. Our communications team is extremely thoughtful about our cadence of communications and how we're delivering communications and how we're leveraging technology to do that.
I'm going to add, if I can, Chris, a different angle, and to Brian, Lori, and Rich as well, of where we've taken technology. We've experienced the same things everybody else has, everything from over Zooming to Zoom stalkers to everything else, where you can't even run to get a without somebody wondering where you are. So I'm not going to add on to that. I think we all agree that we did utilize that. But we actually had an opportunity because of the pandemic to really look and use technology, not on how we work, but how we learn. Because of the fact that we were separated by different countries and time zones, because of the fact that some were working remotely and some were working in a manufacturing facility, we launched a concept of learning through our L&D department of really having the ability to have every single employee be able to learn, whether it's through compliance training or training, whether it's wellness opportunities, whether it's management training or technical training, through the Skillsoft platform, which we purchased, and their Percipio platform. We created our own internal learning and development portal, because of the fact that everybody also learns in their own way. Some like to sit in front of a big screen like we're doing right now. Others like to do it on a tablet. Others like to do it in a train, in a plane, in the car, whatever the case is. This allows everybody to do that. And that also goes to all the other functions, like I said, whether it's compliance or otherwise, or TED Talks. So we rolled out and got a license for every single one of our employees. And Skillsoft has over 4,000 different sessions, as simple as 5-minute TED Talks to hour-long training sessions. And we gave employees the opportunity to create their own learning library. And then we would push out compliance-related, so that anybody in the world, and they do it in all languages as well, can at any point in time learn from wherever they are. The traditional, you have to set up and go to a classroom or sign up for something and be on a Zoom call with everybody else, we threw that out the window. And it's been huge in terms of driving that, because then it drives their career, it drives their opportunity. And we're talking about everything from DE&I through just technical training. And that has helped us a lot too.
Amazing, Joe. Yeah, I think one of the big things as well I've seen with many organizations is sort of democratizing learning and this content. In the past, some of this training was only reserved for the few in organizations. And now companies are now opening it up to everyone to access information globally, which has been really amazing to see. So another sort of silver lining just come out of this. But thank you so much, Joe and Rich and Brian and Lori, for sort of setting the tone for the conversations. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. Bye, everyone. Thanks.